wrestling is sort of the glue. You know, it's the foundation for my entire life, but it's also the mortar for all these bricks to stay together. And it's a beautiful thing. Chris Waddell, I am the owner and promoter of the WWA, the World Wrestling Alliance, since 2004 now, officially since 2010. We grew up in a little town called Central City, Kentucky, my brother and I. Lifelong childhood fans of professional wrestling. I believe it was our father that introduced us to wrestling because he was a big wrestling fan. Glued to the television every Monday night, flipping channels back and forth between the WWF and WCW, arguing about who the best wrestlers are, but always glued to the TV this close. I think it was just in our fabric to know that we were going to wrestle.
It's really weird because I don't have the best memory, but as far back as I can remember as a child, it's always just been about wrestling. Like my life in general has just been about wrestling. Me and my brother were just huge fans growing up forever, and he was like, I looked up to him, so if he was into wrestling, I was going to be into wrestling, you know. I think as it went on, I got into it even more than he did in the long haul, but it was just every day we were watching some type of wrestling, whether we were on our bikes riding down to the movie world to rent VHSs to go back and watch stuff from the 80s or the late 90s. It was just all about wrestling.
I was designing up logos. I can remember sitting at my desk in high school paying no attention to the stuff I probably needed to be paying attention to, but instead articulating logos and things. Actually, the logo we use to this day, I created it at 14 or 15 years old. But my brother and I organically started wrestling on a trampoline. We were wrestling with our stuffed wrestling buddies, and then some local friends would come down and they'd wrestle with us. And Ray and I had a mind for it. So then it started with just wrestling around as a bunch of kids. And then we started booking matches and booking angles and storylines and creating characters. And it sort of evolved. And then we started outgrowing these trampolines that we were wrestling on. And it became kind of the organic decision that we would need to buy a wrestling ring.
Well, leading up to that, we were going through trampolines because at this point we're getting older. So I was 14 when we got our ring. So, and we've always been bigger kids. So it's like, here we are probably 180, 200 pounds on these kids' trampolines. So we're breaking trampolines. It's like every few months we got to save up our money. He'd steal my lunch money so he could put it back because he knew in a month we needed another trampoline. We'd go to Walmart and get another one. A few months later, we do it again and again and again.
And for years, I tried to put together plans to build one. But it wasn't up until 2004 that we actually bought a wrestling ring. And then when we had that ring, we knew it would be only a matter of time before we were running legitimate wrestling shows.
And then I'm not sure where he got wind from, but Shelby Adcock used to run wrestling shows in Central City, Kentucky, where we grew up. And he talks to Shelby, and Shelby says that, you know, you put, I think, 500 down, then it was 100 a month. So he worked with us on it. And then we would just pay those payments. Once again, he'd take my lunch money. And that's how he'd pay off the ring. And then we got it and we set it up in our backyard. And the worst part about getting the ring was when we got it, all the wood was bad. Like it'd been outside soaking wet. So at this point now we have a wrestling ring finally after all these years, but we can't get on it because there's no floor. But when we finally did, it was awesome because we just had like all of our friends out there. We got to set up the ring and then we just got to try all this stuff we always seen and had no clue what we were doing besides on a trampoline. And it just like from there grew. And like, I was never formally trained. Like he was never formally trained. He had a couple of days of training at a company, but it was just being so obsessed with it.
When we got that ring, we started getting more serious. And there was about a 3-year period where we were building kind of our knowledge on wrestling and we were learning. My brother and I are self-taught, which is frowned upon in a lot of wrestling circles, but we don't care. You know, we kind of bucked that system a long time ago. Backyard wrestling is frowned on in the business. It has been for decades and decades. But there was a 3-year period from about 2004 to 2007 where we were wrestling in this ring and learning and honing our crafts.
I think at that point we worked together to try to learn. When we were really younger in the trampoline days, I would kind of be the dummy. Like he would run me over with the car every now and then and like legitimately just do crazy things like that as the big brother. But like literally we did not listen to the Don't Try This at Home commercials every week. That's exactly what we did. We tried them at home and somehow I guess we succeeded.
And around 2007, we started putting people in that backyard. People started coming out and watching us. And so we would have 10 or 12 people at a time come out and watch us wrestle. And we built on it from then. So then there was another 3-year period from 2007 to 2010 where we would start putting 50 to 100 to 150 people in that backyard watching us.
I grew up in Central City and I had heard about the company through people and friends and stuff and said, hey, they have this company or this backyard show across town and we need to go check it out.
Thomas Jernigan, as our audience would know him as Alexander Knight, he was this little kid that would be running around up and down this alley where we wrestled, and he'd be watching us wrestle. And we would kind of ignore him because he annoyed the hell out of us.
At the point in time that I come around, they were already having shows. So I was able to watch it, experience it, and say, hey, I want to be a part of that. And then I meet with Chris Waddell in summer of 2009. And my journey starts there.
Like I think he kind of just had this hard external, because I just felt like he kind of gave me the vibe that he had to be tough. And it was always like, you don't have to be tough. Now he's a completely different person. Back then we did not get along whatsoever. I was older than him, and I wouldn't say bully him, but I'd try to check him, you know what I mean? Because he felt like he had to be tough. So I'd always just kind of be on him all the time.
I would say within the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, he's pretty much like my best friend at this point. It started out as me and Chris as, thick as thieves. And then over time, we're still pretty tight, but it's been me and Ray mainly here recently.
Alexander Knight's amazing. I think that when I look at our company, when I think of the most well-rounded, good at everything professional wrestler, he would be the guy. He can talk, he can wrestle. I think he could be a heel, he could be a babyface. I think he can do just about anything he needs to do in pro wrestling. And I think he's probably one of the most complete wrestlers we have.
I think in 2009, we decided that we wanted to start becoming a legitimate wrestling company. But we realized at that juncture that we all couldn't do it, because I was 18 years old. I think my brother was getting ready to turn 18, or my brother may have been an adult too. But some of us were adults, some of us were not. Some of our closest friends were 15, 16 years old. There was a sense of loyalty that I felt to all my friends, and we didn't want to do it without them.
I remember it being stressful, and I remember a line my brother would always say is that he had to become a businessman overnight. And I don't feel like it gets any more true than that, because we're literally, he's an adult, but we're pretty much kids in the backyard. And Alexander Knight was a guy who I think he was 17, so he couldn't get a license. And even then, he was like a backbone of the company, and he was one of the guys where he's like, well, I'm not doing the show without him. That's why we were going over state lines, because of guys like that.
At the time, I was 16 years old. So they're telling me, hey, you can't do what you want to do and what you love for at least another year or two.
Next thing we know, we got the city government, the state government. He's getting called to court. All this is going on, and he's just got to figure it out, figure out what to do.
We are going to war with the local city officials who are getting complaints from neighbors about noise and things of that nature. So they're passing down city ordinances and things like that. They're trying to shut us down. I fight that. I went to city council meetings. I went to a handful of city council meetings trying to defend our having a right to wrestle in our backyard.
We have never dealt with anything like that before. And in those city council meetings, those things are open to the public. And, normally no one cares to go to those things. I remember when he went to that city council meeting, there was 15, 20 wrestlers just standing in the background, just waiting to see what was going to happen while he went up there and delivered this speech to all of them. And it's like, they were looking at us like we're crazy, because we just came in there like a force. Like, you want to take us down, we'll all show up.
We were shut down from August of 2010 to December of 2011 in the state of Kentucky. But during that period, we run 3 other shows out of state. With there being no athletic commission in Indiana, we were able to secure, actually right before we got shut down, in the backyard, we lined up a date for the Evansville National Guard Armory. So right before we stopped doing our backyard shows, we were already able to announce a date that we would run the Evansville National Guard Armory. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that whereas we were forced out of the backyard, we were already making the transition into being a legitimate company.
We have a standard, and without the commission, we would be overrun with professional wrestling, and it wouldn't be the people that have that type of standard or that quality to their shows if it wasn't for the commission. So yeah, my opinion of it has changed. At first, I wasn't a fan, but now I can understand it. I can appreciate it a little bit more. At this point in time, as many roadblocks as we had, there was no way that we were going to be able to run back in this state. So that was very depressing at the time. And then when the news broke, hey, we're coming back, we're going to start December, and we're going to be going from there. It was 2011.
It wasn't about, there wasn't egos, there wasn't There wasn't people worried about money. There wasn't anything like that. It was kids having fun and just learning, and just every day was an adventure, trying something new. It was just, that's one word you could sum it up in, was fun. Some of the best times of my life really were just spent in that backyard.
A lot of my peers, a lot of my friends have trouble seeing the difference between their friend versus the promoter of the company. And it can be very difficult. It can be very challenging. You might be cussing each other, but it's in fun. You might be asking each other, what gives? What'd you do? What are you thinking? Should I have been working somebody else? Do we have heat, brother? You know? But at the end of the day, especially when it's your friends, especially when it's people that you're that close to, the weirdest things like that still bring you together.
Teaming with Alexander Knight is something I would have never thought would happen. So we never wrestled for a long time till I finally became a babyface. And then we got to do this angle that I loved where we built up to this barbed wire massacre match, and we ended up winning match of the year that year. And it's just like, when you're in there with someone as good as him, it's less work. Because a lot of the times you might be in there with a green guy, you might be in there with someone you got to help through, and then he was in that same boat. You know, a lot of people he was working with, he had to help through. So when we got together, it's like, hey, we both know what we're doing. We don't really need anyone to pull us through this, but together we can make this even better, because I felt like we were just on the same page.
I think that's where the friendship really started to bond, is because when, you know, Ray is working in the main events and doing all this stuff for years and years and years, and then I start trailing behind, and now we're two of the most established guys in the company. And, you know, we're working former WWE stars and TNA stars and ECW stars that are coming into the company. Chris recognized, okay, you got two of the best workers that is not going to mess up. Put them in the ring, and then me and Ray started creating a bond over that of like, hey, me and you're the guy always, you know, doing these matches and carrying the company on.
A lot of siblings are different. I often think about my friends like Thomas, like Alexander Knight, like Tyler Hawkins. What relationship would my brother and I have if we didn't have wrestling holding us together? I had dated a girl for 3 years, and she knew that I was bi or pansexual, and when that relationship ended, I wanted to come out to everybody else. It was time that I started telling other people. Around the same time that I started coming out to my friends, I met Logan Legit on Tinder. And the way that I met Logan was I was scrolling through these Tinder photos, and Logan was standing there in a wrestling shirt. And I was like, yeah, this is my end with this one. So I sent Logan a message, and we started talking and hit it right off the bat. Hit it off, and Logan told me that he was interested in wrestling, and I said, well, I've got a wrestling company, you know. Let's talk, let's chat. We went on a date to a WWE show in Evansville for a first date, and it just went from there.
So my story is probably a little different from other people, because Logan was the first person I met once my brother had come out as bisexual. So their first date was at that Monday Night Raw, and I was also at that show, but I wasn't with them. I was sitting somewhere else. And at that show, my brother messaged me, I believe, and was like, I want you to meet Logan after this Raw. So when we went outside, I met him, and he was kind of shy then, actually, believe it or not, because, you know, getting to know him later, there was nothing shy about him, but he was really quiet. And
I met Logan. I remember we were at an Evansville show getting ready, and Logan come from the back. And at that point in time, I didn't know who he was, but he's very entertaining and very, you know, captivating. I was like, who is this? And then Chris ended up introducing me to Logan, and, you know, from then on, it was fun nonstop.
We met because Logan and Chris, they met. Logan wanted to get involved with wrestling. I needed a manager terribly. I had just turned heel, not good at a promo at all. Chris thought it was going to be a good fit, and it was. Where he could speak when I couldn't, and then at the time I would wrestle when he was just learning.
Tyler Hawkins was just coming up and hadn't really honed his skills as a good promo at that point in time, and he needed a manager. A manager can really help a heel, and Logan come in at just the right time, and it just seemed like that was going to be the perfect combination.
the first show he came into was his debut, where he did the promo in the ring. And me and Knight were both, you know, I guess kind of being old school. We're like, well, this guy didn't do a tryout. Why is he just getting thrown on the show? You know, why he didn't do this? And so we're kind of looking at it like, what the hell? You know, like, why is this guy just getting thrown on the show? He ain't done anything. And then he grabbed the microphone. our words. And I said, well, I guess that's why, you know. And then from there, it's just, he was a natural, completely natural with it.
And it helped that we were in a manager-wrestler relationship, kind of, because we got to work with each other every single show, talk to each other about what he wanted to do on certain shows, or if he had an idea for something, and then we would like work it into matches and everything. And it helped me in a wrestling standpoint. It elevated me be like 1,000 levels, just because he was there to help manage me and like the promos and stuff.
And Logan at first was nervous. He was a little scared to get hurt, and he wasn't the quickest to pick it up, but it didn't matter because he had so much charisma, so much personality that anything. Eventually, he got the ring stuff down too, but like the first few months of just training, I was like, I don't know. But then he'd go out there in front of a crowd and just light up, and it's like, well, the wrestling don't matter at this point. You know what I mean? Like, you got more personality than this whole roster back here. Like, and then he just added the wrestling to it and then just became legendary from there.
So his debut match would have been in probably the summer or fall of 2019, and Logan's first match was with me, and it was sort of a put on. It was supposed to be a manager versus wrestler kind of thing, and I'm pretty sure that's what made Logan fall in love with wrestling. Once he was wearing that wrestling gear, once he was performing and executing the moves and knew he could do it, there was no holding him back.
He had so many good matches, but that match, him and Stonewall in that ladder match, was crazy. They tore it down.
He outperformed everybody that ever had a ladder match. He did things that he didn't even think that he was going to do, that no one else thought he was going to do. But maybe that's why he did them, because no one else thought he could do them or wanted to do them. So he went out and showed everybody out.
Brutal. That match is brutal. The thing about Logan is, you would think that type of person would just be like freaking out, but he kept his cool 100%. I gotta give that person respect. Anybody that can do that's got my respect, especially Logan.
That match, he also did a move to the outside where he lost consciousness. He got knocked out. And his body and brain kind of went in autopilot.
You know, Logan getting knocked out and continuing. You could obviously tell something was off, but if you go back and watch the match, he just keeps on going. He's just the heart of a wrestler. You can't quit.
I was in the back, and I think my mom come back there and said, Logan's hurt. And this is after the match. So I just went out there because I was like, I'm going to go check on him. And I helped him to the back there, and he was completely out of it. And I remember carrying him back, and he's like, what happened? And I said, don't worry about it. Just hold up the belt. And he just held up the belt and got a big pop, and then he got to the back and was freaking out. But at the end of the day, he was fine. And
I've been in that situation where you don't realize what happened or what you're supposed to happen. Yeah, I remember that being a funny moment where he just kept apologizing. I'm sorry I won. We're like, no, it's okay. You were supposed to win. And then, 20 minutes later, you're repeating the same story back and forth. Yeah, but it was fun that night. We always got to aggravate him after the fact about it.
For years leading up to that, 3, 4, 5 years, it was like every year I was involved in the match of the year. And it almost got to where because at the end of the year, we do these awards and everyone would vote on it. And for a few years there, I was involved in it. Almost got to where in my head, I'm like, oh, this is kind of easy, Then they had that match. Then Logan Legit became a babyface. And I said, okay, I got competition. And that was the first year in probably 5 or 6 years that someone without a Waddell and as their last name won match of the year. And that was because of Logan and Stonewall.
For somebody who's been wrestling like me for 15 years and done every type of match you could think of, you know when something is brutal, and you also know when something is good. Whenever you can look across the audience and not one person's on their cell phone, not one person is speaking, not one person's at concessions or merch or going to the bathroom, and all eyes are glued on that match, that's when you know you have something special. Trying to get a room of people to agree on one thing, that something is so good that everyone should give their undivided attention, that's when you know something's good. And you could pretty much already tell that was already going to be match of the year.
I had a couple of missed calls on my phone at work. I didn't answer calls I didn't recognize, and they had left voicemails that I didn't that I didn't get until after work. But they were trying to get a hold of me. Logan, I was the last person Logan had called or texted in his phone, so they were trying to get a hold of me first. They ended up getting a hold of Logan's mom at right around the same period of time that next morning. That someone had got a hold of me and let me know that they thought they had heard Logan got involved in an accident. All they would tell me on the phone was that Logan was on a ventilator. I started getting ready as quick as I could to head to Nashville, and I called my mother, and I just told her what was going on, and she gasped. And I've heard my mom gasp a couple times, and it's never good. And I said, "What? What's wrong?" And she said, "That's not good." And I said, "Ventilator, what do you mean?" And she says, "They don't usually come off of those."
I got the news that he had had a wreck, and I don't think I knew the severity of it. And then someone let me know he was on a ventilator, and Alexander Knight was at the same job with me. And I don't think I was really supposed to say anything to anybody because it was kind of like we didn't know what was going to happen. But I went ahead and talked to him about it. And I felt like, how's my brother? You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's different for him. They were in a relationship. Like, this is his person. Like, so I'm worrying about my friend and also like, how's my brother, you know?
I got a call from Chris, which isn't abnormal, but for that time of night, it was a little abnormal. So I picked it up. He told me about Logan, and I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. I still don't want to believe it. He said that Logan got in a wreck, was flown to Nashville, and he's not with us.
I remember, I think it was around 11 or 12 o'clock, Chris calls me, and I'm sitting at work, and I step outside, and I hear his voice crack, and he said, "I got something to tell you. Are you sitting down?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Logan's been in a bad accident. He's in Nashville." And he says, "Thomas, he ain't going to make it."
We had a show Saturday. I was still telling people about his death on Friday.
I mean, the opening of the show, we come out and surround the ring, and Chris informs everyone of what happened. And
Now it's no longer Pandemonium. It's just a Logan Legit tribute show, but we still do a lot of the matches. And I just had to check out. Like, I had to literally like check out of real life and go wrestle. You know what I mean? And that's probably the hardest part.
In that locker room meeting, I made a comment, and when I got on the microphone on that show that we dedicated to Logan, I made a comment, and that was that we had lost the best of us. And it's not a soundbite. It's not something that I just said because I wanted people to be, "Oh yeah, it's just the truth."
Every single person that walked into the door, you wanted to grab and hug because they felt all the same feelings that you did. More than ever, everyone was kind of collected for Logan, for Logan's family, for the show. But we still knew we had to go out and perform.
Logan's mom and like probably 30 or 40 family members and friends we gave them the whole balcony, you know? So it was kind of like, I feel like for that show, that was the crowd that we were performing for. There was 200, 300 other people that paid, and people bought shirts, and all that money was donated to Logan's family. Like, we did everything we could to like send him off the right way if we had to, to show his legacy and show what he meant to everybody.
The thing that made Logan so beautiful to me was Logan's mind, Logan's ability to interact with people, Logan's ability to treat people with respect and be so bubbly and friendly and things like that. I think the most important thing for me is to continue to talk about Logan's legacy and to acknowledge what I think would be the most important thing in Logan's mind. Because if Logan was sitting here right now and I were to ask Logan, like, what do you want your legacy to be? I think Logan would say, to make sure we were talking about how much Logan loved professional wrestling. We actually had a fan have this championship made, and they had it made for me as a gift. But this is the Logan Legit championship. And the reason that championship means so much to me, it's a token of affection from a fan where I know that if Logan saw that, Logan would be a blubbering mess, because Logan, the biggest tragedy about Logan's death is Logan truly had no idea how much he meant to everyone else.
He always tried to find the best way to talk to somebody, to walk into a room, find somebody, make their day better.
People still miss Logan. I still miss Logan. You know, the fans still hadn't forgot. That's the best part.
Meeting Logan made me so much more open to everything. Like, he made me understand, like, everyone's just human, you know? Like, I feel like I taught him a lot about wrestling, and he taught me a lot about life.